This is Defenders TV Podcast episode 127 about The Punisher, episode 6, The Judas Goat.
I hear a lot of people saying the blues, but I'm gonna tell you what the blues is. When you ain't got no money, you got the blues. When you ain't got no money.
Welcome back, fellow Defenders. This is our episode 127 about The Punisher, season 1, episode 6, The Judas Goat. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hi, I'm one of your other hosts, John.
And rounding out the group, all the way back from Hell's Kitchen, it's Chris.
Welcome back to Ireland, Chris. We're not there with you, unfortunately, but
You're not?
we do feel a lot closer.
Yes, we're at least an hour time zone difference versus the 5-6 that we were.
Mm-hmm.
Not fun.
It was great fun. We had to cover up a lot of ambulances and New York sounds. It kind of added a little bit of extra realism to our podcast for a while, I think.
Yes, it was very Hell's Kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and Hell's Kitchen has an apt moniker. That's all I will say. But anyway...
I love it. Well, you're joining us for our episode 6 coverage for The Judas Goat, The Punisher. Thanks so much for joining us again. If you want to come over and join us on our Facebook group to chat with us about anything Marvel related, you can come over to facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV Podcast, where we chat all about Marvel and all about the fun news that's been coming out the last couple of weeks. We've had the Infinity War trailer, which is pretty awesome, and we have some Marvel Netflix news, which is that Jessica Jones will return next year on March 8th. A bit of a weird one there. March 8th is a Thursday. So the first Netflix show, I think, even of all of the other stuff, like Orange is the New Black and House of Cards, I think this is the first Netflix original that's going to be released on Thursday.
Bit of a weird one. I'd love to know the rationale. Also, like, we usually get it around March 18th, day after St. Patrick's Day, so I'm always a bit... I was prepped for that. Now I'm like, what? Why? Why earlier?
A very special thanks to Rebecca over in our Facebook group, who pointed out just after we recorded that March 8th is International Women's Day. That's the release date of Jessica Jones Season 2. It makes total sense today. Thanks so much for that one. Also, while I'm recording a little fill-in, Punisher Season 2, if you hadn't heard, has also been confirmed. That's probably the earliest we've had a confirmation for one of the Netflix sequel series or the follow-up series to one of the Netflix shows. 3 weeks after release. So very, very quick. Very impressed. So very excited to continue our coverage of Punisher and obviously go on to Punisher Season 2 whenever that gets released as well.
Yes, and we do also know that Kilgrave is somehow there in the second season. Mm-hmm. Maybe in her mind rather than in reality. I'm guessing flashbacks.
But
that's pretty cool.
Quite a definitive end.
David Tennant having, being back in there, I reckon.
Absolutely. So if you want to make sure that you hear all of our thoughts about The Punisher and obviously leading up to Jessica Jones and Jessica Jones itself, make sure you subscribe to the podcast by going over to our website at defenderstvpodcast.com. There's a whole subscribe section there that will allow you to subscribe on any good or evil podcast catcher. Just choose iTunes, Google Play, any of the other options that are on there for you, and you'll hear all of our thoughts about each of the episodes every week popping into your ear holes.
Yes, and of course you can send your emails to us at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com to send any of your thoughts, discussion points, comments on any episode of The Punisher so far or for the series as a whole. Any feedback is most welcome.
Yes, so boys, I think with all that beautiful intro, I think it's time we get on with it. Let's get on to the episode details. Derek, do you want to give us who wrote and directed this?
Absolutely. This episode was written by Christine Boylan, a first-timer on The Punisher. Christine has written 3 episodes of the short-lived Constantine series, which I must say I really, really enjoyed. It was fun to watch that. So she has worked in comic TV shows before, but this is our first episode over on Marvel with The Punisher.
Cool. Yeah, no, Constantine was one of those series that went before its time, I think. Mm-hmm. And also being kind of a fairly mystical, mysterious, magical, mystical kind of person within comics. Seeing the Dr. Fate helmet there at Constantine's base of operations was pretty sweet, and I was hoping to, might get a glimpse of Dr. Fate there. Mm-hmm. Alas, no, and it was cancelled way too soon.
But John Constantine lives on. I understand he's going to be over on Legends of Tomorrow next season, so he has still worked in all of the shows. I think he's been on Arrow and now Legends of Tomorrow, so good to have at least John Constantine around.
And there is an animated series.
Exactly, yes. The actor who portrayed Constantine in the TV show has now basically become Constantine. He is in the animated show, he's in Justice League Dark, which was another animated film. He's now the voice.
Yeah.
Matt Ryan, long live, and may he forever reign as Constantine.
Absolutely, yeah, he's really good fun. This episode of The Punisher, though, to get back to it, was directed by Jeremy Webb, a British director, again, having worked on Grange Hill, Doctor Who, and Downton Abbey. He has done a bunch of shows over the US, but now is in the Marvel Universe properly, in the extended side of the Marvel Universe, doing The Punisher. He's also directing Season 2, Episode 8 of The Fantastic Legion, a great X-Men-related TV show, and has done Episode 9 of Marvel's Runaways, which is available on Hulu in the US, so I'm hoping we'll get to catch up on that one pretty soon. I've been hearing great things about that.
Yeah, that's a good resume apart from one of them, I think.
Grange Hill?
No. Grange Hill. Big fan of that as a kid. I'm going to leave our listeners to guess which one. Write in with your answers on the back of a postcard or on the Facebook group. Which British show does our British co-host actually hate? That is the question.
It's a little bit of a Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other, isn't it? With Grange Hill, Doctor Who, and Downton Abbey.
It rhymes with Rounton Babby.
well, John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for this episode?
Sure. Mike returns to Curtis to help treat Frank's infected wounds and fever, picked up at Gunner's outpost in the woods. Frank starts to hallucinate, projecting death and destruction on both his and Micro's families. Curtis blames Micro for Frank's current condition and questions the difference that their crusade will have on Frank. Russo and Dinah get closer, considerably closer, but post-Curtis, Russo begins to understand and learn Dinah's motives, that she is investigating Frank, his former squad mate. Back at her office, Dinah learns of Gunnar Henderson's death, and her and Stein investigate the scene of the killing woods with local law enforcement and realise that Frank Castle is alive after pulling and analysing blood from the scene. Meanwhile, Lewis is arrested for confronting an N.Y.P.D. officer while helping Vietnam veteran and fellow support group member O'Connor hand out pro-Second Amendment leaflets outside a courthouse. But after being bailed out by Curtis, Lewis learns that O'Connor lied about serving in Vietnam. Alone, angry, and feeling betrayed, Lewis confronts him in his apartment, and as their argument escalates, Lewis stabs him repeatedly to death. After his confrontation with Dinah, Russo starts to broadcast a radio call to Frank and reaches out to Curtis for information after learning from Dinah that Frank is still alive. But Frank approaches Russo, and they meet up where Russo offers to give him a new identity and take him far from New York. But Frank doesn't take up Russo's offer, following a visit with Micro's family. But back at the docks, Russo realizes he ain't coming, informing William Rawlins, a.k.a. Agent Orange.
So that was the big reveal that we've been waiting on.
Yes, he is the Judas Goat.
Mm-hmm.
Bah. And that's a sheep, I suppose. That's a cat. I don't know. Look, I can't do goats.
It's somewhere in between.
Yeah, somewhere in between. Absolutely. But yes, I think we should get on to our War Journal notes for our top 5.
Before we do, I'm going to ask our fellow Defenders to go over to defenderstvpodcast.com and use our voicemail section to send in your best goat impression, and we'll have it here in the next episode.
I like it.
That would be hilarious, because mine certainly doesn't sound like a goat.
No.
But yes, let's get into our 5 biggest notes for the Punisher War Journal for this week. John, do you want to take us off with our point number 1?
Yes, the harrowing. Wow, this affected me. The harrowing homecoming dinner where Frank's in a fever back at Micro's base, and he's obviously hallucinating, I suppose, or hallucinating within his dreams, his fever dreams, of this kind of execution dinner, with Micro's family and his own. I found this really kind of tough stuff. Mm-hmm. I thought it was pretty brutal, just how Frank kind of does his no, wait, and then kind of is getting splattered by blood from the execution of like Micro, but just sort of where the soldiers turn their guns onto the children. Like, it was really It was really harrowing, I thought. Really full on. I would say that could make people feel really uncomfortable, but it's kind of all connected with the guilt that Frank has for Gunnar's death as well. You know, this idea of, you know, we hear about him, you know, leaving a man behind. You don't do that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Micro has fixed that, but I mean, you know, Frank is in a bad way with his wounds and so on. And ultimately, we see here Micro turning to Curtis for help. It's really interesting because we see, you know, Curtis, even though he's helping so many of the other veterans, he himself carries or holds a gun under his pillow as well when Micro goes to his apartment for help. And we get some, again, a bit more goriness here with him pushing the arrow that Gunnar had originally shot him with through Frank's shoulder. I thought this was real kind of great production. It looks so real.
Absolutely.
But from all of this, I think, you know, Curtis really starts to question Micro about the point of this vendetta. What is it going to achieve? Mm-hmm. How is it going to help Frank? You know, he blames the current condition that Frank sees himself in on Micro as well. So I thought this was a really kind of full-on, in-your-face opening here.
Absolutely.
And in particular, I thought that homecoming dinner that they were having, a Thanksgiving dinner, was pretty full-on and harrowing.
I know we joked about you being Micro last week, John. I think all of us were Micro in that scene where Curtis is taking the arrowhead out of Frank. That was absolutely brutal as he's looking away from him going, is it over yet? How about now? Is it over now? Because I could not be standing beside the body of someone as an arrow is being forcibly removed from their body all the way through Frank's body as well. Just really tough scene. The one thing I loved, and as you say, that homecoming dinner or the dinner with all of the families around together, it is a really tough scene to watch. What made it helpful, I suppose, to not be as difficult was you knew this was a situation that could never happen from the start. You knew it was something that Frank was there with David and David's family and his family. You knew the minute it started that it was a dream. It wasn't one of those ones where the rug gets pulled out from under you as an audience. You know from the minute it starts that it's a fever dream, which is great because otherwise it would be one of the most damaging scenes that they've ever put in the show. Definitely.
And I think it's an evolution of Frank's current dreams where he sees his wife being shot. You know, now it's almost within his maybe subconsciousness or his feverish subconsciousness. You know, he's also bringing Micro into that fold of people that have been affected by, you know, everything that's gone on. So it's also a progression of Frank's own previous dreams and nightmares, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I that scene, even though I knew it was fake, or a dream, I should say, not fake, because it was obviously quite real to Frank, the evolution part, I enjoy it, because what we see now is that Micro, against all odds, and all as much as Frank does not want it to be, Micro is becoming someone important to Frank.
Yes.
And actually, Micro's family is becoming someone important to Frank.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that throughout the episodes. He originally started going over to Micro's family as a threat to Micro. Mm-hmm. But now that is not the case. Now he's going over of his own volition. He still says it's to annoy Micro, but I don't think so. Jon Bernthal's reaction to being bloodied is fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, it's some serious acting there. He is this cold-blooded killer in one scene, and then here you can actually see the pain rip across him as the blood is splattered from Micro's blood and the kid's blood, and like, it's crazy.
It's so tough to watch, but a fantastic performance by Bernthal here.
Yes.
This is a career-defining performance from him, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
really, really good. But it does, as you mentioned, John, it does kind of lead on to our second point, which is about Curtis and the toll that this whole connection with Frank has taken on to us. So Curtis running out of answers, really. We see him after the fact, after questioning this vendetta that's been going on with Frank, we see him sitting down again with the support group that he's been involved in for a while, and he starts telling them one of these stories about his life in the medical side of the army, something that we don't really hear much about. We've seen things like MASH when we were younger, which talked about, you know, the toll that a war takes on people that are on the medical side. What you don't see is the kind of this kind of training that he talks about, where he's saying that the way he learned how to do field operations is by that he was given a goat to take care of, which he jokingly called Cassius. I had to question what he was saying here, by the way, Chris. You may know this from gaming, from online gaming. He says the reason he called him Cassius was because the goat was a GOAT, which means greatest of all time, just like Cassius Clay. So that was a nice little gag from Curtis. He gets a good laugh from his support group. But he's effectively saying he's given this goat to take care of, and then they keep sending it out with more and more injuries, and he has to run out and keep saving the life of this goat over and over again. That's a really cruel way to teach somebody how to do medical practitioning.
Oh yeah, definitely. I thought this was really good to have some development of Curtis. You know, he's in the support group, and you're there thinking, you know, he is this rock that, and that's what he has to project to the other veterans. But he's also dealing with his own shit. Look, let's be frank here. Yeah. But you know, he's to me, this was really interesting. This idea that Curtis, in his own way, is just worn down. There's an attrition and there's a cost of what he's doing, putting a brave face on as the sort of leader of this support group. Yeah. It's this idea that, you know, people like Curtis, who are helping other people, have still got their own stuff to deal with. Mm-hmm. And gradually, you know, he's being worn down by O'Connor in the support group, who is really just countering everything he says. I think there's a toll being taken, on him by the fact that, you know, he is reaching out and trying so hard, with Lewis, but he is just simply resistant to this help. You know, Lewis is almost looking at Curtis, a fellow Marine and soldier, as being part of this kind of this lie or betrayal that he personally feels. I think that's wearing him down. You know, I think Cassius the Goat is this metaphor for all of this, you know, and then out of the blue, Micro is with him here. Frank, he's having to save Frank. What's happened to Frank, one of his best friends and comrades from when he was in the army? And all of this, you really got this sense of him having quite a heavy burden here, and a lot of stuff to deal for himself. And I think, again, that kind of links back to the gun under his pillow. You know, in that sense, he's no different from Lewis. And of course, later on, he has to lie to Russo. Yeah, yeah. So it all seems to build on Curtis. And I thought this was a real nice development of this character. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a piece in actual real life where, like, psychologists for shrinks will have their own shrinks and psychologists, because you have to listen to this horror over and over and over again, and that's going to affect you. And it's the same here. Curtis has his own issues. He's feeling just as bad, but he projects this beacon of hope for these other people. And every now and again, like any light, sometimes it winks out, and it's just about the reignition of it. And I think that's where we'll see the story arc of Curtis kind of continue, which is he's been this beacon of light for all these people. This has dragged him back down, but he will be reignited, if you will. Yeah, he'll become the beacon again.
You hope so. Yeah.
We hope, because it's a bad character of hope to lose. Yeah. Like it is the I suppose the commentary here is about any kind of support group. If you've ever been to an Al-Anon meeting or an Al-Ateen meeting for Alcoholics Anonymous, the members of the group that are there, or the leaders of the group that are there, effectively are people who feel that they are more comfortable out of being alcoholics or being drug addicts. But they will always say that it just takes one moment for them to fall back into the lowest point they've ever had in their life. And that's the guidance that they're trying to give to other people, is every day you have to fight to keep yourself above water, to keep your head above water. And that's the same kind of guidance that Curtis is saying. He's not saying he has the greatest life.
He's certainly not as well adapted as Billy Russo is to coming back to the real world, setting up his own company and getting his own business, you know. He's working in insurance, you know. He's not saying the world is fantastic when you get to my place. He's saying you have to fight, you have to talk these things out, or else the whole world will get on top of you. And this is what's happening to Curtis here. The whole world's getting back on top of him again. So it's a really good other side of the character, as you say, John. Nice bit of development.
Yeah, definitely. I think he definitely needs to get outdoors, and I think with that, I think we can move on to point number 3, where if you go down to the woods today, what are you going to find, Chris?
Well, you're going to find a lot of bodies, to be fair.
Or are you?
I'm not going to lie.
No
or
bodies.
Are you? But you're going to actually find no bodies, but signs of a scuffle and some gunshot
scuffle.
wounds and some blood. Yes, of course, I want to talk about Stein and Dinah getting a nice break up in the woodlands. You know, as you would, you want to go for a nice walk on an autumn day, and actually turns out to be a forensic scene where Gunnar was shot and found dead. Mm-hmm. This was good. I really enjoyed this. What we can see is Dinah is an actual investigatory agent. Mm-hmm. She's an agent who likes to investigate. Mm-hmm. She has some skills in that.
I was definitely getting Misty Knight flashbacks to
Yes.
some of her ability to piece all this together. It was very cool.
So very much this is like Misty Knight. This is the Will Grain and Hannibal. So she's just being able to see one or two things, a small break in the leaf, in a twig, and also a massive bullet hole in a tree, and is able to piece together that there is things going on there. I'm very interested to see where the death squad turned up to. Like, obviously they were not there. Gunnar was left, but they didn't. Agent Orange did not take. He took the death squad, but did not take the body of Gunnar.
Leave no trace behind of those people. Yeah.
Well, it's more, if you're going to do that, why did you not take the evidence of a killing?
Mm-hmm.
But I was wondering, did they? Because I think it was, you know, they were saying this is a break. We have to kind of move fast because it was local enforcement because Micro had called it in. So they had gotten there. But that's interesting. We actually don't know what's happened to the soldiers that were part of that death squad that was sent to Gunnar's shack to take him down. But I was wondering, were they taken away by local law enforcement?
I get you, yeah.
Or has, you know, an elite sort of SWAT team swooped down and taken them? But then, as you say, Chris, why would they leave Gunnar?
That's right. We didn't actually see Gunnar in the field. We didn't see him lying there when Dinah arrived. She was just pointed to the area where his body was, and that's how she puts together this whole piece of this investigation of the fact that Frank was there and the fact that there was many well-trained people after Gunnar. So yeah, we didn't actually see the bodies, but that's a good point. I assume that they were taken away by Agent Orange, but that may not be the case, actually.
Yeah, but overall, look, it's a good forward momentum for Dinah's story.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
She's piecing together what's happening, albeit at a slower pace, but that's more because of the evidence that she's working with. Mm-hmm. So this is the first break to show her something is going on US soil. That doesn't seem right.
Yeah, like she,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, because she says who has the resources and the balls to do effectively this kind of operation on US soil.
Exactly.
And Stein does have my favourite line of the episode where he's talking about, okay, Frank's in the wind now, how do you find him? How do you find dead Marines? They're not on Facebook or Tinder, I checked, which is just a great little moment from Stein.
I really want to see the deleted scene where it's him just swiping left and right on Tinder, going dead Marine, not a dead Marine, not a dead Marine, dead Marine, dead Marine, not a dead Marine. It'd be amazing. It'd be fantastic.
I love it.
But speaking of swiping left and swiping right and partnering up, if you will, who wants to take us on to our next point?
Yes, they partner up, but not for long. Lewis and O'Connor. Yeah, I'm really enjoying this storyline with Lewis. I'm kind of very interested, very intrigued to see, is this a parallel storyline, you know, with very small links to Frank Castle and the Punisher storyline, where, you know, with Curtis and so on, and obviously him reaching out to Russo at Anvil. But, you know, is this a separate parallel storyline to the adaptation of The Punisher as a graphic novel and a comic book series? Or is there going to be some link up here between Lewis and Frank? Are they kind of going to cross paths at some point? I don't know. But, we see here just a further insight into Lewis. We have the Second Amendment rights outside the courthouse because there's a teacher in there who carried their gun to school. Not to really go into Second Amendment rights for the US, but Lewis makes that point of they lose more of their liberty every day. And for me, as a non-American, I find that immensely, strange that a teacher carrying a gun into their school and then being brought up in a courthouse, which of course they would be done in Ireland and the UK, that you would see that as a loss of liberty rather than a dereliction of their duty of bringing a lethal weapon into a school of people who are children or teenagers or, people that you would want to protect. And of course, it's the perception of how you view that gun. Is it a symbol of protection or a symbol of violence and destruction? And I think probably my perspective as a non-American is one that, these things cause way more trouble than they prevent. And so it's an interesting thing going on here.
I totally agree with you, John. This stuff that's going on with Lewis, it just feels like he's getting beaten down left, right and centre by people that just don't know what they're doing to his mind. It feels like he needs to have somebody present with him at all times to interpret what people are saying to him, because he's just taking the wrong thing out of every situation. This cop on the courthouse steps, where he's being very specific about what he's saying to him. He's saying to him, there's only two of us here. We're not blocking any entrance. We're just handing out pamphlets. You don't need to get rid of us. And the police officer's going, no, you need to do what I say. That riles Lewis up no end, because he's effectively going, I protected this country in a war from people in a foreign nation. And now I'm being told by a cop who's using his power way more than he should that I need to calm down or I go to prison. This is not what I protected my country for. Having someone like O'Connor, who is the most atrocious person I think I've ever seen in any of these shows. Forget about the villains. This is a guy who's effectively guiding Lewis into a really, really bad situation, and he's never even seen a day of battle. He's lying to him from the moment that he's met Lewis in the first place. All of this stuff with a character like Lewis, who is on tenterhooks at all times, means he's like a powder keg.
Yeah, and I mean, that part where O'Connor just slowly moves away from this increasingly argumentative tone between Lewis and the police officer. I just thought that was really a great capture of who and what O'Connor represents. That, he's full of bombast, he's full of getting particular messages out, and then the policeman comes up and he just slowly idles away, deserting Lewis, as Lewis then is getting accused of reaching for the cop's gun, which he doesn't. And so again, it's another kind of perspective here where it just creates mayhem and chaos,
I completely agree with you on everything. And that's all. I'm not going to just finish with that, obviously. That I need to participate, but I agree, essentially. The writers were very clever with this, okay? The policeman saying... the policeman not just exercising his right, but overextending his right, well, it is an interesting allegory for today's modern world. The increased part where he goes, did you just reach for my gun?
Oh.
And obviously Lewis didn't. Again, is a commentary on what is happening today in the world. The Second Amendment rights, just the whole issue of protesting, lawful protesting, which Lewis is doing, and he calls out that saying that, and obviously not, again, an allegory, commentary, if you will. The piece about who is inside the courthouse, again, a commentary.
Yeah.
Within this small scene, Lewis himself is a commentary on coming back from war and not being able to handle it.
Yeah.
Now, do I think Lewis will cross over with Punisher? Yes. I think what we are seeing here is the birth of a unique Marvel Netflix character, or a character from the Punisher. I don't know who though, but you are seeing a person who had special forces training, army training. We think Lewis was special forces. I'm not 100% sure. We never mentioned, but we do see that he's slightly twitchy. So I would assume he's seen some bad things. So we would assume he was in the front line.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of the things he's seen as an army. I was going to say an army brat, but that's the wrong terminology. As an army soldier, as a serving man within this machine, he's probably seen things. He's going to. I think they're trying to create this very fractured person who is the anti-Frank, if you will. Frank had all this training, all this stuff, and has become a anti-hero, but still a hero.
Yeah.
I think what they're doing is showing that this Lewis character could have easily been Frank, and he goes down this path. So he is the anti-Frank. He's the anti-Punisher.
Yeah.
He is going to be the guy who has the training and end up going on rampages. He's going to kill people. Yada yada yada.
You're right, Chris, and we see his first victim here, and I thought it was going to be Curtis as he arrives before the support group set up. He has his conversation with Curtis about why he stopped him from getting the job at Anvil and dobbed him into Billy Russo. I thought there was going to be a knife pulled there from him. Curtis only just about seems to be able to calm him down, and then it's only when the other members of the support group arrive that he leaves after finding out that O'Connor's been lying to him about his service. I can only imagine what this does to a mind like Lewis, who has been constantly saying he's not getting the respect he deserves from what he did for the American country in that war, and then finds out that some lying POS is basically saying he won a medal for his time in the army. He knows the experience that all these people have gone through, and he's trying to guide everybody to pick up arms and join some kind of militia to take on the government for the treatment of vets. And then you find out that he's just been stationed in Texas and not seen one day of war. So this kid's mind is a bit fractured, as you say, and he has been totally pushed over the edge to the point where he goes to visit O'Connor.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose who he thinks is his bedrock in O'Connor, the only person who seems to align with Lewis's point of view, and that's because it's conscious of O'Connor to do that, ultimately ends up being exposed by Curtis, who has bailed out Lewis here. As I say, O'Connor has completely left Lewis in the wind, which goes against the Marine philosophy of never leave a man behind.
Yeah.
And he finds out that O'Connor really is a fraud and a bit of a shit stirrer, really, which leads ultimately to a bit of a Barney at O'Connor's, and then just the repeated stabbing by Lewis into the belly of O'Connor.
Yeah.
And then he loses it. But is it a release of almost recognition of being back in the field, back in active duty, or is it a cry for help that Lewis chucks out there? It's probably a bit of both, but I mean, yeah, it was fairly visceral, that as well, I thought.
Oh yeah, definitely,
100%. One, I hate O'Connor. The character is has been designed to be despicable.
Oh, absolutely.
But again, a commentary on, in my opinion, people, the lies people tell about themselves to basically shit stir.
Yeah.
Like he is a troll in manifested. Oh, I served in the army. Well, you served in the army, but you didn't see war. You were in a fort down in Dallas.
Yeah.
The death. Well, one, Lewis needs to kind of get back in shape a bit. If O'Connor nearly kind of beat him at one point.
O'Connor does have army training.
Yeah, but from the let's be honest, he's he's in his 50s, he's got that bit of a punch. I'm like, Lewis, come on now. Your drill sergeant.
To give Lewis some credit, he didn't go there to kill O'Connor, he did go there to confront O'Connor. So he's probably more overpowered by the emotional reaction to this. It wasn't a plan, maybe.
Oh, you Lewis lover. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, O'Connor is the one that draws the kitchen knife out, I suppose, into this, and manages to get a cheap swipe across Lewis's belly. But then, ultimately, it is back in combat mode, I suppose, for Lewis to some extent, and fueled by rage of this lie that O'Connor has done. So, I mean,
it's when Lewis gets that first stab in. Directly after that first stab, then he goes crazy and kills O'Connor stone dead. It's a tough scene to watch, and I think because O'Connor is such a despicable character, you're not supposed to feel sorry that he's dead. You're supposed to feel sorry about what's happened to Lewis and how far he's been pushed. And I think they did a really good job in just that balance, because that's a really difficult balance. This kid's a murderer now. After coming back from war, he's now murdered somebody on home soil. But I still feel, what have they done to Lewis? What has broken his brain here?
Speaking of broken brains, let's talk about Russo and his broken promises and the Judas Goat. Yeah, there you go. That sounds more like it.
I got my bleat in.
Yeah, there we are.
Wow, very impressive, John. Yes, Russo getting very intimate with Dinah. You guys talked for quite a long time about the very intimate sex scene that was going on between Dinah and Russo last week. This one's a little more intimate, isn't it?
Well, it's certainly full on, and it was a little tropey, actually. Not during it, but after it, where he then feels betrayed. I kind of felt this was, really love it up and start to get that connection, and then he happens to flick through some of her files to see that she's looking for Frank. She's investigating Frank. It felt a little tropey, hot, intimate sex followed by the feeling of betrayal. But nonetheless, it was good. I think we're certainly getting our Marvel ab quota going on in this show.
I think so.
And what's better Marvel abs to look at than Billy Russo's, by Ben Barnes?
I know what you're saying, John, about this kind of tropey little bit, but I don't think you're giving Billy Russo enough credit here. He knew from the first moment that Dinah talked to him back in that gun range, he knew exactly what she was looking for. I think he put himself in a situation to find out what information she knew here, and then use their relationship to feel betrayed, especially by this moment at the end of the episode that we find out who he's working for. He's in exactly the right place that he wants to be in here. He's not in a relationship with Dinah for anything other than the information and the amazing sex that they seem to have every day. No, she says this is the second time in 2 days, and it's amazing.
No, absolutely. I do. Yeah, as you look through it, then definitely it becomes less tropey. And I must say, the great thing I think about this episode, given the end, is there's so many moments through this episode where you, or for me anyway, as an audience watching it, I was testing Russo. I was like, when he goes to see Curtis after Dinah has reached out to him and said that she sees that Frank is alive, I'm kind of there going, he's really confronts Curtis. You can see him like looking at Curtis for his reaction, and I'm like going, oh my goodness, is Curtis going to get killed by Russo here? Because Russo is not this person who we think he is. It was like all these tests through this episode leading up to the end, and it's like, and he doesn't, and he seems to have a genuine reaction with Curtis and seems to be really affected. Same when, Dinah reaches out to him, I was like going, okay, again, it's on a dock, it's in a remote location. I was there going, okay, is he going to kill her now? Is this where he turns, where he's not the nice, playful Billy Russo that we've kind of been led down with so far in this series? And I think then, finally, when he meets up with Frank, after he's been broadcasting, trying to connect with Frank, following the information exchange with Dinah, it's kind of like, is he going to kill Frank there? Next to the sort of the pizza truck or the burrito truck, and each time he doesn't do it, and you're like going, okay, maybe this guy's really, really genuine. Like, hooray, brilliant. Danny Russo is one of the good guys, and he does great sex as well. So it's kind of like, way, and then it's like, no, you have just like gone into the car with one milky-eyed Rawlins. Okay, You bastard. You evil get.
Yeah, completely. So I suppose they had actually been broadcast. When you look back in hindsight, and I suppose hindsight is 2020.
Definitely.
You can see all of it, and you're like, oh, it all makes so much sense now. Mm-hmm. They did broadcast it back then, but the way that Ben Barnes plays this character is fantastic.
So good.
He plays it as this suave army ranger, whatever, like special forces guy who is great with the ladies and God's gift, and we get that, and he has that comical side. He has, but you know he's good, and he cares about his brothers, yada yada yada. And then it turns out to be all fake.
Yep.
And you're like, oh, all those things you're saying, you're doing it from an arrogant side, not a comical side. You actually think this. So, very quickly, on the intimate scene with Dinah, yeah, they're really going for it now. They're like, okay, we're going to go for the Game of Thrones high level of sex, HBO. We're going HBO level here now. The finding of the actual picking up the case file with Frank's name on it, which obviously she placed there to try and get a reaction from him. But the bit I found was like, I was like, oh, dude, you're butt naked here. Watch for paper cuts. Seriously, that's a lot of paper.
I do like that Dinah says to him, put on some pants, you look really stupid right now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you're going to have an argument, don't do it naked. That is the moral of that scene so far.
I suppose it depends.
Well, yes, I suppose if you want to, when things are made up, I suppose it cuts out a lot of time. But anyway, I really enjoy this character, and again, don't want to be spoilery about who the character of Billy Russo is in the comics. More and more and more and more and more, this is where we are going towards. But I think they're going to do it in a unique way that will make it unique for the Netflix. And this is the first step.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering as well, will they actually completely U-turn it? Okay? We find out that Rawlins has something on Russo, and we'll actually have a redemption arc or a redemption point for Russo. So, like, Rawlins is basically, for whatever reason, blackmailing Russo, has been for years, has something holding over his head, and then we'll see that maybe Rawlins will try and kill Frank, and we see Russo do the ever-tropy jumping in front of the bullet. As a redemption arc.
Maybe.
It's like,
what really surprised me about these scenes in this episode here is when he meets Frank on the docks. And again, I totally thought they're best friends. They're finally getting back together and finally meeting up with each other. Nothing bad goes down. He gives him an option here to get out of the States. He's going to give him a new passport, a new identity, get him out of New York. And what really surprised me was that final scene is Russo standing there with all of his men pointing guns at where they think Frank is going to arrive from. They are intended to kill him. That's exactly what's going to happen. If Frank turned up to that moment, they were going to kill him. That wasn't going to be a moment where Russo was going to save him. He's working for Rawlins and is going to kill Frank Castle. That's the bit that kind of shocked me at the end of the episode. I thought it was kind of a, let's meet up in a coffee shop next time, Frank, and then he drives him to Rawlins thinking that he's taken him to the airport or something, or knocks him out and takes him captive and tries to convince him to work with them, something like that. But yeah, there was definitely a kill zone being set up for Frank Castle.
Definitely. Like Russo says, your family's gone, Frank, but you're still my brother. I mean, like, this guy has no shame. I mean, that's when I was like, okay, well, he's not killed Dinah, he's not killed Curtis, and he's not killing Frank here and now. So, and he's just said that.
Yep.
And then, as you say, it's like he gets in and says he ain't coming, and Rawlins turns around and goes, "Why didn't you kill him when you met him earlier in the day?" And it's kind of like, yeah, Russo, that would have been easier. But like, it is building that trust. It's maintaining that. I mean, Russo does all the right stuff. With regards to, that kind of marine code, in a sense, in that first meeting, to really try and cement the trust with Frank after this time away from one another. And
let's be honest, it would have been a very short season if basically Billy killed Frank right there and then.
In episode 6.
In episode 6, like, and that's the end of Punisher, and it fade to black. Rather than that infamous fade to black episode, or season finale, or I should say, actual show finale of The Sopranos, we get it here, and that's it. And actually, all you see is episode 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. It's just more black. That would be what ultimate troll I should say.
They would never have done that. Never have done it. No, it's. But I do love this moment. I do love these scenes with Russo. I think that's our top 5 points. One really quick note from me about the episode. Billy Russo's car is one of the most amazing looking cars I've ever seen. That's a Rolls-Royce Wraith. I saw Ben Barnes over on Twitter saying how excited was I about knowing that Billy Russo drove that car. It meant I get to drive that car. It is a beautiful, beautiful looking car. Very, very impressive. Any other notes for the episode, guys?
Nothing from my side. I'm finding Punisher very light on the Easter egg so far. I'm searching hard.
A lot of eggs, but not the right type.
Yes.
Not made of chalky. But yeah, no notes from me either.
And I know we did initiate book watch for most of the first 5 episodes. The book that was being read again in this episode was Life of Pi. I think this just indicates how short a window of time we're watching what's happening, because it does take a couple of weeks usually to read a book. So Life of Pi is sitting on the table, which is now being read by David's wife, so it's going around the family.
Yeah, it should probably be food watch. There's an awful lot of food being consumed here.
Absolutely.
I think one of our followers on Twitter has pointed out that Frank likes a good meal.
I'm waiting for the Punisher cookbook, like the wonderful one that they did for The Walking Dead. I'm waiting for the Punisher cookbook where we see all these amazing meals that Frank eats. Probably just to keep himself bulked up, I suppose, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But, Chris, do you defend the 6th episode of The Punisher, the Judas Goat?
I do, if not only for the punishing sex scene, the punishing reveal at the end, and the punishing death midway through. It's getting there, lads. They're bringing all these different stories that I couldn't see how they were going to thread them together. Now, I'm still not sure how they're going to thread Lewis's storyline in, but overall, the Billy storyline was a nice reveal. It was a nice double cross that you could kind of see coming, but actually, no, none of us did, because we wanted to assume the best of intent, and then looking back in hindsight, you see the things that he did and why he's done them, which is I really enjoy. Dinah's storyline, I'm really enjoying. I think what's going to end up happening more and more is they're going to need to integrate her deeper into this. At the moment, she's a peripheral character. I think Punisher is a bit of a slow burn for me, in my own personal opinion. Mm-hmm. But it has all the right things there. It's just, it's getting there. It's trucking along, as they say. But I want to see where they take it. I want to see where episode 7 takes me, especially with this reveal at the end. So, John, on my defense, I have to ask you, do you defend this episode?
I do defend this episode. I give this 4.5 Judas Billy Goats out of 5.
Bah.
Yes, exactly. Meh. That's probably a sheep again. But anyway, it's really, really good. I mean, I actually found this episode really quite heavy in many respects. In a good way. I think it really touched a lot of hard, deep issues in this, whether it's from that opening scene, whether it's from Lewis's storyline, and even just the whole look at Billy Russo moving through Frank's immediate life by contacting Curtis, or his unknown life with Dinah Madani and being involved with her. That whole then reveal, Ben Barnes portrays Billy Russo so charmingly, and as a result, you want to believe that he is okay. And for me, this episode, at each of these stages, I was thinking, okay, is Russo going to reveal his true intentions here? Is he going to do it, is he going to kill or kidnap Madani? Is he going to do it with Curtis? Is he going to do it with Frank? And each time I kind of came away going, okay, he didn't. And it really reduced his threat. And then bang, right in at the end, he's there with Agent Orange, really working the field around trying to get Frank dead. And it was just like, wow. Even though it was signposted, you were playing this character so well to make you kind of, he was saying all the right stuff, doing all the right things, being all the right kind of people to the right people, and in the end, it's all just a cover. So, hats off. I really enjoyed this episode, even though I thought it was quite heavy. And yeah, I'm really intrigued to see where Lewis goes. I would love for Lewis to somehow redeem himself and cross over with Frank and get integrated in some way in that way. But nonetheless, I'm really enjoying that. I think it's a really important story there going on, at least in parallel for the moment. But yeah, this was a really good episode for me, definitely. Derek, do you defend this episode of The Punisher?
I absolutely defend this episode of The Punisher. When I was watching this series straight through, this is the one that just jumped out at me and made me realise how important this show is, The Punisher as a whole. These whole scenes with Lewis were fantastic. What we also are seeing is Frank developing a brand new family. That opening scene where he's sitting down to dinner with his new family, which is David and the Liebermans, along with his old family who've been murdered. That's effectively one of the signs that he's got a new family. Where he talks about Billy, it's all about he now has that family as well. There's some great moments in this episode. It's one of the most interesting ones to watch for me, that turn of Billy Russo. I wish it wasn't so. I think Ben Barnes has been fantastic so far in the series. And now knowing that he's the bad guy, it's a tough kind of flip to watch. But we'll see how it plays out for the rest of the season. I do love Madani as well. I think herself and Stein's investigative work going on. It's nice to see that. They're not just sitting in an office reading papers and coming to conclusions. Her being out in the field and seeing what she can do, investigating and finding out that Frank must have been involved in this situation. That's very interesting. Yeah, there's some good stuff to come in the future for these episodes, but a definite defend from me. I think it's time to get on to our feedback for the episode.
Yeah, through on our Facebook group, we got some feedback through from Alice Bowler, who says, I'm so happy for your podcast because it's helping me pace myself. If it wasn't for you guys, I would have binged the season already. One random comment. I don't follow the comics. Everything I know about the MCU comes from Netflix. That being said, I don't trust Billy at all. When he had the conversation with Curtis at Frank's grave and Curtis had that little slip up, Billy was on that right away. I got the impression he's looking for Frank. I don't trust him. Knowing he's a future baddie makes perfect sense. Love the podcast and your takes on all the shows. Stay cool. Thank you, Alice, for that. Really, yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I think, certainly for me, I think I wanted to believe this was, a Fox Mulder moment for me. I wanted to believe that Billy was good. Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting point that you make there about that little slip from Curtis, that Billy was kind of onto it right away. I missed that, so I'll definitely want to go back and look at that. But it makes sense, certainly when I saw Billy in the vet support group room and he was talking to Curtis about whether he knew anything about Frank, the look on Billy's face really, it was so well done by Ben Barnes in terms of, I really got that sense that he was kind of analysing him deeply for the response that Curtis gave him to see whether Curtis was lying to him. So there's definitely that aspect of Billy Russo that is really made to come across from Ben Barnes.
Thanks so much for that feedback, Alice. It's really good to hear from you on that. We are doing Punisher a little bit more slowly than we normally would for our Defenders podcasts, but hopefully you've been enjoying going weekly with the show. For our next piece of feedback, it's the return of the Luke Cage swear jar bell. Salim Kisler says, I can't be the only one who thought that after the closing reveal. Does anyone else think Agent Orange might be the Jigsaw of this universe? They did zoom in pretty close on his disfigured eye at the end. This also explains why Russo was looking for Frank on the radio before hearing it from Madani. Really interesting point, Salim. There is a character called William Rawlins in the comics who looks exactly like this version of Agent Orange in the Punisher TV show. So I don't know whether they're merging the two characters. That might be a way they're doing it, but definitely William Rawlins does exist in the comic books. You weren't the only one that thought as Russo was revealed as the bad guy.
Yeah, good spot on noticing that Billy is transmitting his radio broadcast before hearing it officially from Madani that Frank is still alive. Yeah, that really kind of ties into the fact that Agent Rawlins, Agent Orange, had probably mentioned to Billy Russo, he had seen the face of the ghost there at Gunner's woodland retreat.
Mm-hmm.
I would really want to go to that retreat. But moving on, Tina Brown says, called it. According to the trope of the best friend turned evil, it had to be him or Curtis. And let's face it, Curtis is clearly an angel. He lost a leg, he's a counsellor, scraping by and still fighting the good fight. Plus, if they were both good, it would only be a matter of time before they teamed up with Frank, and who could seriously stop them then? Yeah, I have to agree. Although I would, well, I hate tropes, but it's a good trope in this twist, I suppose. They're a trope for a reason. They work. I was actually hoping at one point all of them would be evil, because that would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be, actually.
Now that Tina says it, think about this. That would have been an amazing ending, having Curtis, Frank, and Billy all have been good, and then team up, like walking down the hallway, kind of like that's the final like massive fight. That would have been brilliant.
It would have been great. It would have been great. Maybe all hope's not lost for Russo. Let's see. We'll see as the rest of the season goes on. Thanks so much for your feedback for these episodes. Really good to hear from you. If you want to send in any email feedback, you can email us at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. A voicemail, just go to defenderstvpodcast.com and click the send voicemail button, or pop over and join us on our Facebook group, where you can go into any of the spoiler posts for our future recordings. Just pop in there and leave your notes at facebook.com/groups/defenderstvpodcast.
Yes, and please, as always, come on over and share the love, subscribe, rate, and leave a review of our podcast over on any of your good micro or evil Russo broadcasting podcasts. It's great to have you on board.
So with that, let's wrap up our war journal for this episode. We'll be back with our review of The Punisher Episode 7, Crosshairs, next Friday, the 22nd of December. This is your Christmas gift from us. And don't forget, we'll be back every week from then on. Guys, let's go. I have got Crosshairs on the episode called Crosshairs. I gotta go watch this.
Excellent. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you again next time.
Absolutely. Thank you as always for joining us, and we will speak with you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
This is Raventwood Blackbird signing off. Bye.
I hear a lot of people saying the blues, but I'm gonna tell you what the blues is. When you ain't got no money, you got the blues. When you ain't got no money.
And what's better Marvel abs to look at than Daniel Russo's?
So I can't comment on the abs.
Hang on. Billy Russo.
Oh, Billy Russo.
Who's Daniel Russo?
I don't know.
Oh, isn't he the Karate Kid?
Yeah, yes. Dinah, her storyline, is it Dinah or Dina?
It's Dinah Madani. That's why we keep calling her Dinah. Dinah.
Dinah.
You see I'm hungry now.
Mm-hmm.